This podcast is brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. As you all know, this is a business that I started to give back more to conservation. We roast premium coffee and it ships out within hours of roasting. This guarantees that when you order, you get the freshest coffee possible available. The kicker, we donate 10% of our proceeds back to conservation. You choose where the donation goes at checkout. Check us out at skullbrewcoffee.com and let's do some good together and help protect wild places one cup at a time. Visit skullbrewcoffee.com and pledge your support of conservation today. Hello and welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 121. Today we're talking everything from whitetails and mountain lions to military combat with bow addict Corey Williamson. So stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Hope everyone out there is doing well. Happy Wednesday to you. It's hump day. A couple more days and the weekend will be here. Actually, a long weekend, which is I'm super stoked about. Going to get out and do a little turkey hunting this weekend. Be the last Saturday here in Pennsylvania. Might actually get to hunt it with my old man, so we'll see. I did get out this past weekend finally after pretty much a full season of turkey hunting of miserable failure. I finally got out into the turkey woods this past Saturday morning. Killer morning. Couldn't ask for better weather. Just kind of enjoyed being out in nature. It's been a little too long to see nature kind of wake up. It's always a welcome sight to kind of watch the woods come alive. There were no birds. No birds were harmed in the making of that turkey hunt, unfortunately. But it was nice just to get out. My turkey hunt, as it often does, kind of turned into a deer scout, because this is an area that I had mentioned in a previous podcast that I had kind of stumbled onto. And had come across some really good sign, but that was of course during when was that, March, I guess. So it kind of looks like what it would look like during November, essentially, during the rut, with the leaves all off and so forth. But for me, most of the time I'm not in Pennsylvania during that time period. I'm usually in Ohio, but this year I did submit, for my Iowa tag, so I'm hoping that I'll be in Iowa during that time. So a lot of times I'm hunting these places around where I live, specifically during the earlier part of the season. So, season opener mid-ish September through like the beginning to end-ish of October, and especially that first probably like month from mid-September to mid-October. I'm still dealing with a lot of foliage, a lot of green on the trees and so forth. So I was able to get in there and do a little turkey hunting this past weekend, and actually got to look at what it would look like probably closer to the time that I'll actually be hunting these pieces. So super thick. Some of the setups that I thought might work whenever I was out there scouting, I kind of second guessing now. So that was helpful to kind of see where I might need to kind of make some strategic adjustments. And I think I kind of figured out a couple more things in terms of my setup. The one area that I did kind of mark as a good spot, that I thought might be a good spot, I think is going to hold true. There's an old fence line that kind of runs in this property. And of course not surprising to any of you out there probably listening, but there was a nice, well-worn trail along that fence road, just kind of following it, and it follows it to a food source. And at the other end of that fence line, if you follow the entire property or walk the entire width of the property, it ends up in a swamp, or it ends up back in this other area of bedding cover. So the bedding cover is actually specifically over on some private, but it's not too far off the property line, because the chunks aren't that big. So I think my plan, or at least one of my plans, is going to be to hang some cameras in there, specifically at that spot. And then there's a couple little transition areas that I want to check out too, that I'm probably going to hang a camera as well. So I think in total I might put 3 on this property. One at that particular spot, that fence line. Want to see how early or how late they're making it to the area where I'd want to set up, in terms of going to their evening food source. I think hunting this spot in the evening is going to be a lot easier than the morning, because you kind of have your access is kind of weird, and coming into it, unless I could get some favorable. Well, even if I got favorable, permission from the neighbors, I would still have to walk through some open fields where I have a feeling that deer are going to be feeding in the morning. So it's the access in this piece isn't great for morning. So I'm thinking it's probably going to be an evening kind of setup for the most part. And we'll do a little more scouting. We'll watch the cameras when we get them out and see if that all kind of holds true. But so that one spot I think is going to be good. There's a couple spots as you get closer to the front part of the property, actually where you park, where deer would be coming back into a couple of those food sources. Some well-worn trails in there as well that I kind of want to check out. But there's a couple transition areas in between some of this, like in between some of this food, some staging areas that I really like. That I noticed some sign the last time I was in there, and it's just kind of intriguing to me. So I'm probably going to place some cameras there as well and see what the deal is. And then there is the kind of the side that's closest to the swamp. I want to kind of check out and hang some cameras back there, or at least one camera back there as well, because that swamp makes a nice edge, for deer to kind of follow. And it's not far off the food, so it would be kind of a nice little transition, or staging area for deer to kind of mill around in that particular area. So I got a couple things to check out on this piece. I think I'm gonna have to get some more cameras before all that happens. But do have a cool show for you today. But before I get into that, I do want to make mention one more time that Exodus Trail Cameras, ExodusOutdoorGear.com does have a sale going on right now. It's their 4-year anniversary sale. Year 4 will get you a discount of 25% on all their products. So it's the lift camera, that's the Trek camera, and that is also their new solar panel as well. So check them out, ExodusOutdoorGear.com. Use the promo code YEAR4, that's YEAR, the number 4, for your discount. And then also, as I'd mentioned in the previous 2 podcasts, I'll be headed to Muster in the Mountains, the BHA, or the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers event here in Morris, Pennsylvania. That's June 22nd and 23rd. You can head to the BHA website and go to the Pennsylvania chapter, and there will be an RSVP page there as well, or you can visit the blog post show notes for the show, and I'll have a link there. It's all free. There's going to be a bunch of food, drinks. I'll be there with my family, selling some coffee, doing the Skull Brew coffee thing, and also doing some podcasting. There'll be a bunch of other, of our buddies there, like Bo Martonic and a couple other guys there podcasting. So it should be a good time. Just going to be a bunch of hunters, anglers, and conservationists hanging out, camping, and enjoying some good food, good drink, and good music, and good company. So I do have a cool show for you today, but I want to kind of provide some caveats for this show. Just because this is a little bit different than any of the other shows that I think that I've done to this point. As you guys know, it's like I've been doing these why I hunt things, asking folks why they hunt and kind of get an idea of what makes people tick in that regard. And with the Memorial Day holiday that's about to to come up here in the next couple days, I wanted to have someone on with the military background. And so I had struck up a conversation with this gentleman, Corey Williamson, via social media, and we kind of got to talking and stuff like that. And he's a combat vet, Afghanistan combat vet, and wanted to bring him on, not just to talk about like his hunting, because he's had a killer mountain lion hunt, which we'll talk about. He's of course big into hunting mature whitetails, so we talked a little bit about that. He's absolutely an archery freak, as far as like his dedication to shooting his bow. So all those things that kind of make sense. But I've kind of had this idea, and I think Sitka actually put out a film, maybe a year or so ago, that was around a guy who hunts because he came back from combat, and hunting was the thing that kind of helped him reassimilate into civilian life, and kind of chronicled his struggles, in going through that, assimilation. And so I brought Corey on because I wanted to have a combat vet with those kind of experiences. And the reason I wanted to give this caveat is because we do kind of touch on some tough topics. Corey, to his credit, was amazingly candid about his experiences and some of his struggles, and how hunting was kind of a way to help him get through that, and bow hunting specifically. And so we do talk about some things that might be kind of tough to hear at times. So I did want to just kind of provide that caveat. If anyone out there, wants to not hear some of those things, then you might want to skip through toward the end of this podcast, because we get into some deep conversation around it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get this party started. And Corey Williamson, everyone. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today we have a little bit of a, maybe a little bit of a different show. I know we're putting this out here right before or right around the Memorial Day weekend, or I guess it'll be right after, probably the 31st maybe. But I have Corey Williamson on. He's a gentleman that I've met through social media, as, a lot of folks, kind of make new friends via that format nowadays, especially in the hunting community. I don't know how many folks I've had an opportunity to create a relationship with that I met through social media or through, hunting conventions and stuff like that. And Corey's kind of no different. I've been following him on Instagram for a while, watching what he's been into in the outdoors and so forth. And we struck up a conversation. I was like, hell, man, feels like I should probably just have you on the show, man. So how's it going, Corey?
Going pretty good, man. Glad to be on here.
Yeah, you bet, man. So I know you and I, we were rapping just a little bit before we hopped on to record, but, for the folks out there that, don't know who you are, don't know where you're from and so forth, if you wouldn't mind, just give a little bit of background about, where you're from, what you do for a living and where you're living at.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Corey. I don't know how many people follow me out there, but I used to be chasing the slam, and now it's Bo Addict 91 on Instagram. But I'm from Eastern Maryland, is where I live now. I actually bought the house my dad grew up in and completely remodeled it. So it's kind of cool to
nice,
have roots down, in the family. Originally, I'm from Southern Delaware. Grew up hunting, fishing, and currently I work at a company called Delmarva Power. And I'm actually a lineman there. I work on the power lines, and pretty cool job if you like high voltage.
Right. My cousin actually does it. He works for a local in Pennsylvania with the union, and he puts in he was explaining to me what he does, but it's those huge kind of power grid kind of intersection points, I think is what he builds. He actually had a real scary. We went and did an elk hunt 2 years ago, which, he's a tough old boy, but I wasn't sure how he was going to fare because he actually, a piece of a pole broke loose off a truck, and he knocked one of his guys out of the way, and he actually got hit and pinned between the pole and a piece of machinery and just completely crushed the top of his leg. Yeah, it was touch and go for a hot minute where, we weren't sure if he was going to make it just in general. And then once they stabilized him and stuff like that, they weren't sure if he was going to keep his leg, which he ended up keeping his leg. He has a metal rod in it and so forth. So elk season rolls around, and as like a joke, as a running joke, we call each other Terry or Jim all the time, which isn't either of our names. Don't know where it came from necessarily, but we're getting ready for elk season, and we're like, Terry, you think you can be able to go this year? And he's like, he just looks at me, he's like, boy, I ain't missing elk hunting. And that was it. And he put his pack on, and we started hiking to kind of get in shape and stuff like that. And dude, he kept up, man. He's a tough old boy, but that's some tough work, man. That's not for the faint of heart.
It's it definitely has its moments. You really got to pay attention to everything around you. Take a look at everything before you really get into it, and make sure that everybody that's on your crew is on the same page. Because it's unforgiving, and there's a lot of dangers, outside of being up there and working on the actual power lines and stuff. Loading poles.
Yeah.
And it's a fun job in a way if you kind of like the what ifs in life.
Right. If you like a little bit of a thrill,
Yeah.
I don't know. He and I were joking. I was like, man, I don't know that I could do that. I was like, I'm not scared of heights. I was like, but I have a healthy fear or maybe a healthy respect of electricity. Always have as a kid. I got electrocuted as a kid. And since then, the most I'll do in my house is maybe change out some light switches. If it's beyond that, I'm calling an electrician because I'm not interested in eating, any more 110 than I've eaten in my life already.
Oh yeah. Well, I kind of grew up around it. My dad, he's been in a not the same company, but another local company.
Okay.
And he's been a lineman for I guess about 29 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, I don't know if it's not really in my blood, I guess, but it's just something I've always been around, and I seen the kind of life that he allowed me and my sister to have, and
Right.
I wanted that for my son. And so it was just, it was a good career to choose, coming out of the military and all that. And
Yeah.
glad to be where I'm at for sure.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's interesting too. The guys that I know that are linemen, it's like every one of them absolutely love it. Like my cousin, like we talk about it. And he's like, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. And he's in management now, I guess is how you would put it. And he still gets out there every day and just grinds. He's like, I just like it, man. He's like, I don't want to sit in a truck and we make fun of him. We tell him he's a white hat, and he gets mad. He's like, I get out there and work just as hard as everybody else, which he does. We just bust his chops a little bit. But man, turning back to hunting, dude, how was your 28 season? I know you had a good beginning to 2019 if the Instagram pictures tell the story.
Well, 2019 was a lot better than 2018. I can tell you that.
Nice.
Chill. Well, 2018. Let's see. I had a rough start. We had so much rain this past year. Throughout the summer and all, and it just really ruined a lot of our crops, which really hurt me because an area that I mainly hunt, which, if anybody follows me, you've seen my back-to-back bucks over the years. I shot, really palmated out 8-point, and then the following year I shot it's a mainframe 8 with a hook and
nice.
full velvet back-to-back years out of the same stand, and one stand in corn.
Nice.
Year after that was beans. It was rough because the neighbor behind us had late beans in, so they were younger and more tender to the deer, which everybody knows that they're going to favor that over older beans.
Right.
Well, anyway, then last year, standing corn again, but all that rain, I think we lost. Man, I don't know, probably maybe 15 acres of corn.
Wow.
Somewhere in there. And I had bucks early on, some decent ones. I had a really good one, but he ended up getting hit the following year, or the year before. But, it was hit or miss. Finally ended up getting on one in, I don't know. I think I shot one in November, somewhere in there. I'm not against shooting a slick head
right.
on the rut.
Yeah,
unlike most people.
Right.
I'm in it for the sport. I grew up as a meat hunter, and I'll always be a meat hunter.
Yep.
But I ended up killing. I think just 3 does last year. And then I kind of took a break for a little bit, about maybe a 2-week break or so, and was getting prepped for a mountain lion hunt in Colorado that I had planned for almost about a year, I would say. I had it booked with Cat Track Outfitters in Western Colorado. And, man, I got to tell you, it was pins and needles leading up to it. I don't think I've ever been more excited for a hunt.
Was that your first cat hunt?
That was my first legit cat hunt. When I was stationed in Colorado, I got this brilliant idea. I was going to hike a ground blind up to the middle of the mountains and take a coyote e-collar and set up and try to call in a mountain lion. I'm sure it's been done, but it was just, you don't make a whole lot of money in the military, and I just didn't have the plans or resources at the time to plan an actual one. And I was in, obviously, Colorado, being stationed there, I was in prime
cat country
area to hunt anything.
Right.
But no, it was a blast. I kind of have been spoiled. I've been on a couple hunts over the last few years, black bear hunting in Maine and then antelope hunting in Wyoming. And both of those hunts I killed on the first day, which was kind of a spoiler.
Yeah, for sure.
I get this mountain lion hunt, and it was totally different.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit, man. So what was the lead up like, man? Like what type of prep did you have to do? Was this a I'm assuming it was a gun hunt, right?
No, I went with a bow.
You went with a bow? Okay.
Yeah, I strictly bow hunt.
Okay.
And it's not biased to anything. I say I strictly. I use that loosely. I will gun hunt every now and then, but
Yep.
it's pretty rare. It all depends on the situation.
Yeah, I'm the same way, man. It's like if I'm turkey hunting, I'll usually take a gun, and it's because I'm a pretty
Mhm.
pretty, pathetic turkey hunter. So I'll give myself the best odds possible, but outside of that, it's like there's usually always a bow in my hand otherwise, but no, I totally feel you.
It's hard to beat that rush of being up close.
That's it, man. That's it.
But I mean, I just kind of try to stay in shape as best I can because I knew I was going to be hiking through the mountains, which that didn't end up helping me at all. Because I'm gonna tell you, them mountain boys, they can get it.
Yeah, they can.
I was gassed.
Yeah.
But yeah, just regular workout plan, weighted pack, just walking and stuff, and just gym work. And I had a target. I ended up climbing this tree and throwing a rope over a limb, and I practiced shooting elevated shots, and it really benefited me. I don't know if a lot of deer hunters and all anymore. I don't. They mostly don't check the third axis and everything, and that plays a big role in uphill and downhill shots.
Right.
Even from a deer stand, it could possibly affect your shot. And so really honing in and making sure my third axis was really key, and making sure I can actually make the shots in under thick brush situations. But
yeah, I mean,
that was pretty much as far as my prep work goes.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things where that type of hunt, if you're going to go on a hunt, like what I call an adventure hunt, it's like you want to do your due diligence to be ready, because if you get an opportunity, it's like you don't want to squander it. You know what I mean? Because you're not sure, how often or when you might get a chance to get back and do it again, and will you get another opportunity? So it's always, even when you're whitetail hunting, man, it's like I know for me, I definitely spend time elevated. I shoot pretty much all year round, but like as I hit the summer, it's like I'll start spending time elevated just so I make sure that, just as you kind of talked about, third axis is good. Make sure I feel good elevated, because I'm hunting out of a saddle, so it's like getting used to being in the tree again in that, and then just making sure that everything looks a little different when it's elevated too. You know what I mean? Because I'm trying to make sure that my gapping is consistent, that I'm able to take my gapping from from standing on the ground to an elevated situation. And it usually takes me probably like a session or two to feel real good. You know what I mean? And then after that, I'm pretty good to go. But it's just that little extra that'll help you out. But now once you got into your hunt, man, like what was the terrain like? Like were you, I guess let me start it this way. Like what type of elevation are you hunting at for cats there?
I'm not quite sure of the elevation. I know it's a lot higher than where I'm from, is like negative elevation.
Yeah,
but
right.
It was, man, I don't want to lie, but I'm going to say maybe 7,000 to 8,000 feet, somewhere in there. It was not, like central Colorado in the Rockies, where it's 12,000, 13,000 feet,
right,
and just terrible. This was more of a kind of like a flat rolling hills kind of deal. It's kind of like canyony area, which I was grateful for until I had to start walking to get my cat.
Right.
And it was not in very gradual rolling hills. It was straight down and straight up. But it was cool. I hadn't been to that part of the state. I've been pretty much everywhere else, from all down the Rockies and on the eastern side, and so it was cool to see a different side of the state. And my first day, we rode around in the morning. There was fresh snow, thankfully, so that was a blessing. We cut 2 females, but she had kittens with her.
Okay.
And it's a state law that you can't release dogs on mountain lions with kittens.
Right.
So, and that was pretty much the story it was a 5-day hunt, and we were either just cutting females with kittens or we weren't cutting anything at all. And to be honest with you, for the amount, I mean, that was, I don't know, it's a ways from the Eastern Shore.
Right.
And to have flown all the way out there and spent the money, which, I mean, regardless of what you're hunting, whether you're going on a guided hunt, a DIY, or you're just hunting in your backyard, there's always that opportunity that you're not going to kill something.
Right. Right.
And I try to go into everything with that kind of mentality, so I don't let myself down.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the 5th day, I mean, we got rolling and we all kind of split up in different areas. I went with one boy and the other two went out separate ways, and they just covered as much ground as possible because he's not used to not killing.
Right.
So the guide was pretty stressed out, and so was I.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, imagine they get pretty stressed out, man, because it's all on them, kind of, right? It's like someone's going to them for their expertise, you know what I mean? And if they're not producing, I'm sure they feel, pretty horrible. I've got, have a couple buddies and have had a couple buddies who've done guiding for whitetails and stuff like that too at some decent places around the country and stuff. And that was one of the things they've always said is that, it's, I think the way you went into it, knowing that, like, regardless of whether it's a guided deal or a DIY deal or whatever, it's still hunting, and animals aren't going to just show up and, stand sideways for you or in a tree and say, hey, come get me. There's still always that opportunity that it's not going to work out. And he was always appreciative whenever there was folks that came in that understood that, like, hey, even though there's, for him at least, even though there's great deer around here, and I have a really good idea of where they're at and what they're doing at different times of the year, and I have a pretty good feeling I can put you on a good deer, there's no guarantee that it, it's going to present the right shot opportunity. And then the next part of it is that the person who's doing the hunt has to have the skill set to execute whatever shot opportunity they get too. You know what I mean? That's the other part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a 2-part deal when it comes to it. You gotta definitely have somebody who knows the area, puts the time in. I mean, cameras anymore are definitely a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for whitetails. I know a lot of people use them for elk and mule deer and everything, but that is totally different.
Yeah.
I would imagine trying to pattern a mule deer and an elk would be almost impossible unless you are in a state like Utah where you can use like salt and stuff like that to bait. But
right. Now, when you guys were cutting tracks, like, was that all hiking? Were you doing some side by side riding? Like, how does that work?
I'm glad it wasn't walking. They had a flatbed diesel trucks,
Okay.
with utility beds in the back, and we'd load 2 4-wheelers up with tracks, and you take off. Some days we had snowmobiles. Some days we'd be on side by side. So it was they definitely had a setup for sure.
Right.
To be able to cover as much ground as possible, and they even had horses, and we weren't sure if we were going to have to resort to that or not, which if we did, that would have just made the hunt that much more epic.
Right.
Riding horses back into this canyon and shooting a cat would just been, awesome.
Yeah, it wouldn't get much better than that.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely a lot better than walking.
Yeah. So once you guys did finally cut a track and get on a cat, like, what does that look like? Because I've never lion hunted. It's something I'd like to do at some point. It's on my bucket list, I guess I should say. But so once you cut a track, I mean, are you guys, is it release the dogs and follow those guys and just kind of take off?
They tried to explain like the track deal to me, but I couldn't tell the difference between that and any kind of other animal in the snow.
Right.
But they kind of determined whether if it's a good cat or not. You know, they had tape measures out and all that kind of stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
made sure that it was a fresh enough track that they could possibly run. And once they do that, then they get the dogs all collared up. They've got the tracking collars where you can see them on like a little handheld GPS. Tells you where the dogs are going, you know, where they're at. Some of them have like barks per minute and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
which I have no idea what that would do. And
Right.
it's got a frequency on the collar where it'll show if they're treed. So if they're facing up, I guess there's some sort of mechanism in it that sends back to the GPS that it's treed. So they get all those on there, and they set a couple off. They bring them over to the track and put them on it. And then they start releasing the rest of the dogs. And from there, I mean, it's pretty much epic chaos. Dogs are running all over the place. They're barking up a storm. And to me, you know, being a military working dog handler, to watch dogs work like that meant everything. I mean, that just capitalized the hunt right there. I mean, it was so cool to see them, you know, getting on the track, and then to hear their bark change and all that stuff when they, because you could tell when they were on the cat, like their change of behavior, you know, the way they barked and all that stuff just completely changed. And then we just kind of stayed within an area where they were running. Luckily, they were down in a canyon running this cat, so we kind of got lucky there versus having to ride all over the place, because they can possibly go, you know, miles and miles before they finally tree.
Right.
And so luckily, I'm assuming the cat was either on a kill nearby or something, and she was just held up in this canyon. And so once they got, you know, we kind of rode around just a little bit up and down, and then once they showed trees, then it was time for us to hike in after them, and that was a job and a half of it.
Really? How far was the hike in?
We started up on top, and it was kind of like gradually down, and then we had to crawl through these like two big rocks, and then it was straight down. You're pretty much skiing at this point.
Right.
And then back up like a small ridge, and then back down into another one, and that was where the cat was treed up. But it was probably
it was far enough, right?
a mile. Not a mile.
About a mile.
Yeah, as long as it wasn't straight up
Right.
all the time. But the way back was.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it was skiing on the way down and climbing on the way back out. That's brutal.
Oh yeah.
But that was a nice looking. So once they tree it and you get there, like, what's the setup to take the shot? Like, how does all that play out?
So as soon as I got there, because I got there after everybody else did, because I'm from the East Coast.
Right.
I finally got there, and at this point, I'm dropping everything. I'm dropping my pack, my jacket, and quiver, and all that, and I'm grabbing an arrow and throwing it in, and trying to figure out where I can get, because it was on the side of this little ridge. There's a tree right on the side of the ridge, and I didn't really have any good spot to get a shot. And I had a shot for a frontal, but they say you never want to take a frontal shot because you know, your target's a lot smaller at this point.
Right.
So finally, one of the guys, he had found a hole for me to shoot, and I ended up having to climb up probably 20 yards up the side of this other ridge, and it was almost like a straight across shot to this lion. And you know, when that's a big cat, and it's staring at you, and you're just like, oh crap. And the dogs are barking, because they've got to grab all the dogs and tie them up, just in case the arrow's still in it, or the cat's not fully dead when it falls and gets into the dogs and hurts the dogs. But so there's, I mean, people yelling, there's dogs going crazy, and my heart never pounded so hard, even in gunfights in Afghanistan. I mean, it was just unreal.
Wow.
Finally got it back, shot her, and it was just like slow motion. I watched the arrow just slowly hit her right in the, right where you want it, right in the heart. She jumped up, hit a tree limb above her, and when she came back down and hit the tree limb that she was standing on, I mean, she was dead and fell right down on the ground. And I gotta be honest, I mean, I've never gotten emotional on any hunt, but taking it to the 5th day on an animal that you've had on your list forever,
yeah,
it's an emotional moment, man. I teared up. I'm man enough to say it.
Oh, hell yeah, man! It's like that's. I mean, if we can't have a connection like that with the outdoors, you know what I mean, with nature and animals that we like to pursue, man, then, you know, for sure, it's like I've said it in the past. It's, you know, it's you know, I get choked up a little bit just about every time I harvest a deer, and when I just think about it, just the gravity of it. You know what I mean? It's
oh yeah.
It's this, you know, there's this connection, you know, and some people that maybe don't hunt, and maybe even some people that do, you know, would say that that's crazy or whatever. But I'm the same as you, man. It's like I'm man enough to admit it. You know what I mean? There's, I don't know, just, and we'll get into this in a little bit, but it just means a lot more to me than just flinging arrows, you know. And so for me, it runs a little deeper. But, you know, and I know that does for you too. So that's awesome, man. Like that's a good looking cat too, buddy. Do you is that a full mount that's going on in the house, or what's happening with that?
Yeah, I told my fiance before I left, I said, I hope you're ready, because if I kill one, it's going to be fully mounted in this house. And she knew before I even had said anything to her.
Right.
But,
right. That's awesome.
We're going to have quite a variety.
Right. That's awesome, man. So that's an epic hunt, right? So your 2019 season's already off to like a killer start. So what do you have coming up for what do you have coming up for the rest of the year, man? Like, what's up for whitetails? You doing any more travel hunts? You know, what's going on there?
Well, mostly I travel. Anytime I travel with my dad.
Oh, that's cool.
You know, he grew up, or, you know, I grew up, you know, he taught me how to hunt. I think I was on my first deer hunt when I was like 4 years old with him.
Nice.
And he shot this doe, like the barrel was like right by my head, and I'll never forget it. It was just, that kind of set it all off for me. So, you know, I went to the military and all that stuff, and I really got into bow hunting after my deployment. You know, just to clear my head in a way without medication. And
yeah.
So you know, it was kind of a way for me and him to hang out, because, you know, growing up, he worked a lot, and then, you know, I went away and I wasn't at home for, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years, something like that. I, you know, bounced back and forth.
Right.
And it's just been a way for me to kind of hang out with him. You know, I'm older now, and I don't get to see him all the time, and it's just been great to go and hang out with him and hunt. And he's very competitive, and so am I. And, you know, we went to Maine and shot bears, and
that's
his
awesome.
was bigger than mine, and, you know, never let me live it down.
Right. Well, dude, isn't that the way though, man? Your old man, I always say this, you know, it's like my old man might be getting older. Well, we're both getting older, right? But, you know, there's it doesn't matter what it is that we do, he'd still whoop my ass at it. And that's just you know what I mean?
Don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't get it.
That's like,
he's got that old man strength on me. Like, if we get into like a little bit of a wrestling match or whatever, I'm just like, oh man, how are you still this strong? You know?
I don't think mine can beat me in that, but he definitely kills bigger stuff than me. And I don't get it.
Right. Yeah. My dad, he's a pretty strong fella. I guess we'll put it that way. He's always been just ridiculously strong, and even to this day, you know, he's still pretty he's still a brute. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, I can beat you on speed. You know what I mean? But it's like if he gets a hold of me, it's like, you know what I mean? It's a different story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got to do
that dad strength.
That's it, man. Even my brother-in-law, when he and I, grapple around a little bit or whatever, he'll look at me because he's 10 years younger than me, and he'll look at me like, man, and he goes to the gym like every day, and he's like ridiculously fit, like he's built like a marble statue essentially. And he's like, man, how is it anytime we like fake fight or wrestle or whatever, he's like, you got this like old man strength that you only get with age. He's like, that I just can't break through. And I was like, boy, it's years of hard living and putting up with your sister. I was like, that's what that's called. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Oh man, that's cool though, man, that you get to do those hunts with your dad. My dad and I, so I lived in Orlando for a bunch of years and stuff, and wasn't able to do much hunting there. I was a musician, and all my time was spent in studios and rehearsals and stuff like that, so I really didn't get to do much hunting. And we did take a trip to Alaska, and he and I haven't hunted since that trip to Alaska in like 2002, maybe 2001, 2002, something like that.
You guys are due for a hunt.
I know, seriously, man. Tell me about it. Well, we lived apart, and he still lives in the Carolinas now. He lives in North Carolina, and I'm back in Pennsylvania. Schedules are just kind of hard to match up. We were supposed to hunt last year. He bought a piece of property back in our hometown, and something happened at work, and he couldn't get up because we were planning to hunt for like 3 days. So hopefully this deer season he'll come up and we'll get a couple of days of archery together. But if that doesn't happen, we already put on the books, already have it kind of marked down. 2020 in September, he and I are going to do an archery elk hunt in Colorado with a buddy of mine. So
that would be amazing.
Yeah, man, I'm looking.
That's my dad's dream hunt.
Yeah, it's one of those things where talking about emotional or whatever, it was I like to do DIY style hunts. That's just my preference. I did an elk hunt in Montana with like 3 buddies, and it was all living either in a small cabin or in a tent in the mountain until the weather got bad, and just going after it on public ground. And I love that type of stuff. And the old man was asking me about going on a elk hunt together, and he likes the gun hunt. He raised me, and we always gun hunted together, and that's how I was raised. But I got into bow hunting later in life, and I was kind of on him. I was like, man, let's do an elk hunt. I was like, but let's do an archery hunt. Finally I got him coming around, and he's like, okay. He's like, we'll do an archery hunt. And then we started going back and forth, and I was kind of like, well, why don't we go do this public land thing? And he's not a super old man by any stretch of the imagination necessarily. He's in his 60s, but he wanted something he wanted at least a nice place to stay in the evenings. He didn't mind grinding during the day, and stuff like that. And I had to stop and kind of like check myself for a second. And I was like, man, I'm talking to myself here. I'm like, are you seriously going to be that big of a jerk that you won't go on a hunt with your dad because it's not the type of hunt you want to do? I was like, man, you're an asshole. You know what I mean? So I called him up, and I was like, hey, wherever you want to go, whatever you want to do. I was like, let's do it. You just tell me where, and I'll help make the arrangements and whatever. And so then he was kind of like, I'd like to go to one of those ranches where you just kind of pay for a place to stay. He's like, and then you can hunt the property or whatever. And I just so happened to have a buddy in Colorado who has a ranch, or access to a ranch in his family. And he's like, yeah, man, you can stay at our cabin for a fee, and it's not too bad. And they have about 850 acres on the ranch, but it's surrounded by, whatever it is, 20,000, 30,000 acres of public. That's hard to get into because their access roads to the public kind of run through their property. And so it kind of fits the best of both worlds because they killed, I wish I knew the name of where it's at because you'd probably know. They killed a state record bear on that property last year. And they got some nice bulls on that property too. So I think I'm going to get an elk tag and a bear tag and see if I can't fill both of them that week. So,
yeah, if you're going to be hunting anywhere like northern or southern, definitely buy a bear tag.
Yeah, but he sent me some trail camera pictures. Man, he's got elk and bears. I mean, there's a big water tank there, and there's bears sitting in it like it's a hot tub, like arms along the back, just like hanging out. They're pretty big too, man. So should be a cool hunt. But we're both pretty stoked about it. Get to hang out with him. But man, I want to shift gears here, man, and circle back to your time in the military. So did you go straight into the military right after high school, and what branch did you go into?
Yeah, I was in high school and I was in that JROTC deal.
Okay, yeah.
And so that kind of got my interest with the military. And I knew I was not a very good student. I did not want to be in school because I thought it was stupid and wouldn't do anything for me. So I decided when I graduated, I was going to do military. So I started to talk to a few recruiters. And I initially started to talk to a Marine recruiter. The Marines, I mean, it's a very prized thing, and they seem to get a lot of glory. And so I started talking to him for a little bit, and he was just like really hyping me up,
right?
Telling me all these stories and all this stuff. He's like, "Are you ready to kick ass and take names?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, let's go."
Right.
And then I found out he was a cook, and I was like, "Man, you hype me up, you're a cook." And
that might be one of the best like statements I ever heard in my life. That was pretty good.
Man, like, but because I wanted to be infantry.
Right.
I told myself if I'm going to go in, I'm going to do the hardest, most hardcore job that I could do for my country. And he told me, he was like, well, you can kind of put it on a list, but we kind of determined. I was like, well, I'm not doing that. So then I go and I talk to the Army recruiter. I walked in the recruiting office and I was like, he was like, hey, how you doing? My name is, Session McGill, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, hey, what's up? Yeah, my name's Corey. I said, I want to be infantry. Can we make that happen? He was like, well, let's do some tests and all and see, maybe we can get you somewhere else and get a bigger bonus. And I was like, I don't care about a bonus. I said, I want infantry, or I guess I'll just go back and talk to this cook back here in the Marines.
Right.
And he was like, all right, hold on. And he looks it up on the computer. He was like, well, we can get you out this October. I said, cool, put me down.
Nice.
Some nice paperwork, what goes on. So, yeah, I mean, straight out of high school, went to the Army, infantry. I was on a delayed entry program. So after I graduated, I had spent some time going to the recruiting office, periodically, training, doing physical fitness and stuff like that, and then learning like your rank and your phonetic alphabet and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And then I shipped out in October of 2010.
Okay.
And I went to Fort Benning, Georgia for infantry school. And that was, a lot of people say that they hated basic and all that stuff, but I got to tell you, I actually really enjoyed it. I met a lot of great people. Unfortunately, 2 of them passed away in Afghanistan since we had been leaving there. But it was a good experience. I was there for 18 weeks. Came home for Christmas leave and all that in December, and then went back.
Right.
And man, it was, when they pinned that blue cord on my shoulder, it was just a sigh of relief. That I finally made it through.
Right. Proud moment, I bet, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's something everybody, as an infantryman, that's what you strive for, your blue cords and your cross rifles.
Yeah.
Cross rifles. And it was a great experience. And I was on the Skinny Boy program, so I got to eat a lot, which that was good.
The Skinny Boy program. Nice. So it's interesting, man. I've got a lot of relatives in the military that have, everything from uncles that were in, Vietnam. My grandfather, who, passed since, he was in World War II. And as much as that you go through in basic and then beyond that, the things that folks experience and stuff like that, it's like there isn't a one of them that I ever talked to that didn't that wouldn't say they would go back tomorrow and do it again. You know what I mean? And I think it's hard for folks who weren't in the military or aren't in the military, that have never had that type of bond with other people, you know what I mean? To kind of understand. It's like they put you through some really hard stuff, and then you do some things that are really, really tough, like beyond that, after you go through training and stuff like that. It's like, and they can't fathom how you would look at that as like one of the best times ever. You know what I mean? Like, so what is it that's like that galvanizing thing that people just, that have gone through it, love it, and they're the only ones that can really understand it?
I think it's just the bond. I mean, everybody's got friends in high school. Y'all hang out and do your thing when you're in school and all that. When you go in the military, it's totally different because you're putting. Now this is job specific.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, my life was in somebody else's hands. His life was in my hands. So that bond that you have, because you spend every day together when you're overseas, you spend every day together when you're here, stateside. And it's just something, it was so hard for me to come back into the civilian life, and try to have like a normal life outside of the military. 'Cause nobody understands you. You can't like talk about stuff or,
right.
Throw like weird words out, and they're like, I have no idea what that means. And you got to try to explain it to them, and they're like, that's stupid.
It's
whatever,
like,
dude, you just don't get it.
Right. It's like a whole life, and this might be a bad way to represent it, but it's like a whole life of like your best friends that get all your inside jokes, and then all of a sudden you're in a group of people that know none of your inside jokes.
Exactly. And I mean, now maybe it's just because we were crazy and drank a lot. I think for the most part, every infantry guy is crazy and drinks a lot. I mean, you got to be to
right
to want to do that kind of job. But I mean, 90% of the jokes and all were dirty or homosexual.
Right.
And let's face it, there's not a whole lot of people who would get that and go along with it.
Right.
That haven't
been in that culture. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's different.
So you'd mentioned, that bond and that, your job, your life was in someone else's hands and theirs in yours. So what was your job specifically in the military?
So originally I joined and I was an 11 Bravo, which is an infantryman.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty much I'm a frontline soldier. I go out, do patrols, missions, stuff like that. And I'll just call it an issue arise when you're deployed, you take care of it and try to make sure everybody goes home safe and you eliminate the issue. But when I got to my duty station at Fort Carson in Colorado, they put me in a 11 Charlie platoon, which is mortarman infantry. So I did like a little class, got qualified as a mortarman, which was cool. I got to blow up stuff.
Right.
Who doesn't like that?
Right. Yeah.
And then right before we deployed, my platoon sergeant, he was like, hey, we need to, send somebody to this dog handler school, and it's between you and your team leader. And I was like, well, I'm going to take it because I didn't like my team leader.
Right.
And so I wanted something to hold over his head. And so they sent me and 20 other guys from our brigade to Indiana, Yuma, Indiana. Not Yuma, Indiana. Man, I can't even remember the name of it. But they sent us to Indiana, and we went to Von Lick Kennels, and we started our dog training there. We spent a month there, and then we would spend a month in Arizona and then fly over on a C-130. But I had a German Shepherd. I have a German Shepherd, and he's He's actually retired and he lives with me. So
That's
that
awesome.
it was awesome. But originally I had a female Mallow, and she was not a very good dog. She was her way or no way. So they got rid of her, and when they brought Falco out, which is my dog, he it was like an instant bond. I mean, we kind of bonded for like, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes, and then they sent us on this search for a hidden explosive out in the woods, and I mean, we just crushed it. I was
Nice.
like, man, this is going to be awesome. And so we went overseas, and as a private, which was kind of, you don't, most of the time when you're sitting in on these op orders and stuff like that, when you go over there for these missions, it's mainly higher ranking people, platoon sergeants, team leaders, captains, those kind of deals, lieutenants.
Right.
And they're going over these operations and everything like that, and then they'll go out, they'll brief their team. Well, I actually got to sit in on every single one that I was involved in, and it's intimidating. You know, I was 20 years old, and you know, I was sitting in there, and here I am, you know, the lowest ranking person in there, and I'm telling these guys what I need them to do and what I'm going to do, and it's just kind of it was good because it's helped me communicate and lead outside of it. But so yeah, I mean, we just went over there, and you know, my third day, I found an IED, you know, and that was kind of a wake up call from there, and you know, 12 months of it.
Right. So when was your first deployment?
I did one deployment. I deployed from 2011 to 2012.
Wow.
And I was in the eastern part of Afghanistan.
Okay. What would be the an area that would be near where you were at that people would recognize? Is there like not a town, I don't know what to call them, but
I would say Kandahar City.
Okay, yeah.
I believe that's like the capital of Afghanistan. I could be wrong. But it's a huge city, and there used to be a big Taliban stronghold in the beginning of the war, and so I worked around that area, the Arghandab Valley, and then up into like the Kunar province, like further north. I don't know if anybody's seen the movie with the Korengal Valley.
Yeah.
In it, I was up around that area as well.
Yeah, that wasn't necessarily a pleasant area from what I understood from.
No, it still isn't.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't say it wasn't. I guess you're right. It still is not a pleasant area. So what was a typical day for you? Like, man, like, you know, you wake up in the morning, and 12 months, man, is that, you know, I'm going to show my naiveness here around, you know, deployment timing and stuff like that. But is that a typical deployment, or seems like a kind of a long deployment, right?
Yeah, for the Army, it's always been 12.
Yeah.
And then you get into like, you know, special ops like Rangers and Green Berets and MARSOC and stuff like that. And they actually do shorter ones, like I think like 3 to 6 months or something like that.
Okay.
I believe Marines do 6 or 9 months. And then like right after I had left, they had switched to 9-month deployments for the Army. But so I mean it's pretty. 12 months is pretty average. It's good enough time to get ripped in, do what you need to do, and then train the next group coming in to replace you before you leave.
Right. So how did you work? Like, so you would go out and you patrol, and you said, you know, you found that first IED, and it was kind of a wake up call. How do you work a dog to find that? You know, particularly because, you know, I'm just imagining like everything's hidden pretty well, right? So it's like, I think that's kind of what you were saying, like where you really have to trust that dog, and that dog's kind of life's in your hands and vice versa, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the training, they kind of start them young. It actually uses like box system to get them young. So what it is a box, and the back of it isn't boarded up. There's a hole.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got a hole in the top, and they'll line like 3 or 4 up, and you make them stick their nose in each hole on the top side, and then once they get to the other one, it's got a scent in it like C4 or
Mm-hmm.
like an ammonium nitrate or something like that, which is your most common form of IED, which is a HME, a homemade explosive.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's got this source of explosive in there and a tennis ball. So once they sniff it, you tell them to sit, and then you stick your hand on around the backside, you toss the tennis ball up out of the hole that they just smelled out of. So then they start associating that scent with the tennis ball.
Okay.
So, and then you can start doing like road searches and vehicles and all that kind of stuff. But that's like that's like ground zero for any sort of dog, whether it's a narcotics dog or an explosive dog. That kind of training, it's the pace. And
right.
It's essentially just a giant ball hunt for them. They don't know they're looking for the bomb. They're just looking for the tennis ball.
Right. To them, it's kind of a game, right? It's
exactly.
But it's but I imagine, man, like I don't know, and it just might be me being weird or or funny or whatever, but I don't know. I get a sense that like I don't know, dogs just seem to be super intuitive, man. Especially those ones that are just certain breeds are just really really smart. It's like I have to get a feeling that like whenever they're with you in a situation, because I even know just like whenever something would get weird at the house with like my dog around or whatever, something got tense or whatever, his demeanor would change. Like he would pick up immediately, like, okay, shit's not right. Didn't have to say anything to him. He would just know. And I imagine out there, like they would kind of have that same type of like sixth sense of like, hey, shit isn't right. Did you ever kind of see that where it was like they were giving you a tell before something materialized where you were like, that's what they noticed?
Oh, absolutely. There's multiple times. The advantage, like we were with our dogs day in and day out. So anytime you just learn to change your behavior, throughout training, you could just watch him. You didn't even have to be right on top of it. But you could tell as soon as he picked that odor up, you could tell by his body language. Maybe his ears go back. Maybe he goes from, searching wide to really narrow real quick, or, you just pick up on stuff. And man, I tell you, we've come into a couple compounds, and, you just look at him, he comes in and it's not himself. He's not his normal search. And I come to find out, there's AKs and RPGs and stuff like that,
right?
Or some dude hiding in a room with a freaking AK waiting on you. It's just
right.
It's like you said. It's like they know, and but being with them, you get to learn that body language. Not necessarily like to know what each thing means. Like, hey, this there's a guy with a gun in here, but you could just tell that something was off. You're more cautious as you proceeded.
Right. Is there an instance that you look back on that you're like, when you look at your dog and you're just kind of like, man, buddy, you saved my ass that day? Like one of those types of moments where you can kind of just like vividly remember, think back to like, man, if it weren't for him, I would have been in a heap of shit.
Anytime we found any sort of explosive, definitely. So there's been multiple occasions of it. Nothing where it was like he had to, get in the way or anything like that. But definitely, any day you come home safe is a blessing. over there. And, luckily I was never put into that situation where I had to really worry about, where he would have had to step in to do that, which was nice. Most of the stuff we got were firefights and everything like that versus explosives.
Right.
Where we were at. So that was kind of good. But I mean, I out of all the moments when we were deployed together, I would say it's not I wouldn't say it was like a save my ass moment, but it was just a good visual of why dogs are so important in combat. And I was on a base doing a train up with a civilian dog trainer from the kennel facility that owned the dogs. And I was on a base called Camp Nathan Smith in Canada. And we were just hanging out, busting some spades. And, we start hearing all this explosions. We're like, what's going on? Is that incoming and outgoing? We kind of hanging out. Well, it was actually a compound adjacent to the base. There was 3 insurgents in there, and they had it, loaded down with suicide vests, C4 the door, AKs, just just rounds everywhere, and they had a coilless mortar, and they were lobbing that and RPGs over onto the base. Wow. So everybody took cover. They took, we've got these big, giant concrete barriers on certain bases and everything that are big. Most of the time I looked at it on a FOB, which is a forward outpost, and you don't have that stuff.
Right.
It's nitty gritty, but right. So they actually spun me up to start search a couple incoming mortars and stuff like that didn't detonate. They've got this technology in this room that is just unreal, and it can actually track stuff and tracks if it exploded and all that. So I got spun up, started searching, and we were coming up the south side of this wall on the base, and all I hear is, and I immediately knew it was an RPG. It's just got such a distinctive sound, and you hear so many of them and all, and I would say I was within, I don't know, 35, 40 meters of it, and like straight off from my side, and it blew on this concrete wall, and that kind of got the blood pumping a little bit. And so we do our search and everything, and we start going through the tent that had gotten hit by these RPGs and the mortars, and we come through this one tent. It's dark, and my dog kept going in between these 2 kennels with these 2 cots, and I was, people got food and stuff, and I'm like, dude, come on, quit digging around.
Right.
There's nothing over there. So we try to go back to it. I'm like, dude, let's go. Quit messing around. And I probably pulled him off of it 3 or 4 times. Well, finally, I was like, maybe I should just let the beast come back to him, because I knew it wasn't explosive, and just his behavior, and so I finally end up going back over there to him, and he's back in the back. I can't see him because it's so dark. Well, I had this little light on my vest, and I flipped it up, and I looked, and all I saw was a belt buckle and ACUs, and I was like, oh my God. Now, of course, I knew it wasn't American because we were wearing multicams.
Right.
And I just followed the light up, and it was actually an Afghan interpreter, and he had took a mortar round right to the face.
Jeez.
So, I mean, that was probably like the biggest, uh, like proud dad moment, I guess
Right.
you could say,
Yeah.
with me and my dog. And, I ended up carrying him out of there and taking him to the aid station. But, unfortunately he didn't make it.
Right.
But man, I mean, dogs, they just, it's hard to explain it. They're better than any machine. I can tell you that.
Yeah. It's something about them, man. It's unconditional love, and they will have your back from the day they meet you to the day that they're not there anymore. You know what I mean? It's just like
They,
it's just unreal how they bond to you. I mean, even non-working dogs, man. It's again not a similar experience at all. But I had a Rottie who was my buddy. And yeah, I mean, he knew my wife was pregnant before we did. You know what I mean? He was
oh
following her.
man,
He was following her around. Like, he wouldn't leave her alone. And my wife was like, she was like, Clint, what is going on with his name was Gibson after my guitars. She's like, what's going on with
Mhm.
Gibson? Why won't he leave me alone? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what's up with him. And it was like probably like 2 weeks, and she ended up taking a pregnancy test, and sure enough, she was pregnant. And he would not leave her side from the moment that he knew that she was pregnant until she had our daughter. And then once we had our daughter and we brought her home, we'd be on the couch with her, and he would lean right up against the couch and just watch her. And that was it. Like, he was not going to leave that kid's side. It was just crazy, like the intuition that he had, that he knew, and that was his job, was to make sure everything was cool, and he was going to do that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's cool.
but you mentioned earlier, man, and I want to touch on, like, you and I talked a little bit about the idea of why we hunt. It's been something I've been doing with the guys that I've had on from different backgrounds, of getting a sense of why they hunt. You mentioned it earlier, and we talked about it just a little bit before we started recording, and it was the different reasons why we hunt and stuff like that. And what you had mentioned earlier was just flinging arrows and shooting a bow was just something about it that was, you kind of were leaning toward that the idea of like that being some form of release or therapy or whatever it was, to when you came back to kind of to get your head right and kind of stay off being medicated and stuff like that. So, like, let's talk about the reason why you hunt, what it means to you, and we'll start wherever you want to.
All right. Like I had mentioned before, even I started hunting with my dad at a very early age, and got my first bow when I was 13. Of course, I didn't hunt with it. It was just backyard fun. So that's always been one of the main reasons I've always hunted. Just my whole family has done it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a food source, with sport table, sport family and all that. But when I got back from Afghanistan, I really struggled with alcoholism. I couldn't not drink.
Mm-hmm.
It was a way for me to just kind of become numb, in a sense, to the memories of friends that I had lost,
Yep.
stuff I had seen, and and it really put me in a bad place. And I had a couple friends commit suicide,
Mm-hmm.
just struggling with PTSD, and instead of getting help, I just kind of went down the other path. It's like that angel and devil on your shoulders, and I went the wrong route, and I was drinking heavily, snorting pain medication, and just, I was really at a time in my life where it was either I was just going to keep doing what I was doing, or take the easy way out, like my friends did, and just be done with it all. But deep down, I knew that I had a lot more to live for. God put me on this planet for a reason. And, everybody has struggles. And if there's anybody out there that was in the military, or still is, or anything, that's going through that feeling, please feel free to find me on Instagram or whatever, dude. I'm there to talk. You know, I've been through it, unfollowed it, and you know, I'm living and breathing today. You know, letting you guys know that you can get through it. But you know, that was the big thing. That was a big turning point. I woke up one day and went to my local liquor store and was buying my usual fifth of Jack. And on the way back, I just happened to look out. And there was a couple mule deer standing there, and I was like, man, I miss hunting. You know, I hadn't done it for, I probably hadn't hunted for, I don't know, 3.5 years, 3 years, something like that.
Mhm.
And I just, you know, just seeing those deer, I was like, man, I missed it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went, you know, I got back to my room or my house, and I just got thinking, and you know, I got looking on YouTube and watching some videos and stuff. I'm like, man, you know, I started getting that excitement.
Yeah.
And right then, I was like, you know what? Hey, you know, I don't need these pain pills. I don't need this alcohol. This gets me excited. You know, I need to get back into my roots of what I had done growing up, and ended up going to a local bow store, and most of you guys might know him, Evan Williams,
Mm-hmm.
the voice of Hoyt Archery.
Mm-hmm.
He was actually a local bow technician in at Bell Pellegrino's in Colorado Springs, and met him, and he hooked me up, and that was all she wrote. I mean, I stopped drinking. I'm not gonna say I have completely went sober.
Right.
I like my natural lights, but you know, it really saved me. Like I said, I wouldn't be here today without it. So it's not just social media as it's hurt and helped the hunting industry, in my opinion.
Right.
We see pictures of 160, 170, 180 inch deer, and too many people think that's the standard. Well, you have to kill a good buck, and you know, I've seen pictures of guys shooting 1.5, 2 year old, you know, little bucks, you know, 6 points, little 8 points. And, you know, people are bashing them like, oh man, you should have let them grow, blah blah blah, all this stuff. You know, if you're managing, that's fine, but that's on you. That's not him. You know, to me, the guys that go out and shoot small bucks or shoot does, you know, all the time and all that stuff, to me, they're the real hunters. They're in it for the real reason, not just to shoot a big buck and post pictures of it all the time and brag about it. I mean, too many times you see that, and
Right.
and that's kind of like me. I mean, you know, I manage to an extent, but I don't have a deer on my wall that's over 130 inches. You
Right.
know, and just I'm not going to pass up a buck that gets me excited, whether it's 100 inches or what it is, to wait for something else. I mean, I love to hunt. I mean, I love shooting does.
Yeah.
I'll shoot a doe any day.
Right.
I mean, over a buck. I mean, I don't know. Neat mentality, you know, like that.
Yeah, man. I mean, well, I think too that, you know, all the stuff that you've seen, been through and stuff like that, it's when you find that joy again, right? It's like you don't want to suppress that. You know what I mean? It's like, why push it to the back? It doesn't make any sense to. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You know, I appreciate you sharing that, man. Like, first off, I want to say I'm glad you're here. You know what I mean? Like, I'm glad you stuck around. I want to say thank you for all the stuff you did, your service, and the sacrifices that you and your family made. So, and I hope that people out there, if they are struggling, I hope they do get a hold of you. I think that the outdoors and the timber have a way of doing some healing. And I
Absolutely.
and I hope that more people turn to that and and find value in their self again. So, but with that, man, I think that that's a killer message to end on. I want to say thanks for coming on, brother. I appreciate you doing this.
Anytime, man. I really appreciate getting to spend time and talk to you and share my story, and then hopefully this will get out to the right people if they're going through something, and they'll turn to it and get better, because we only have each other in this world.
That's it, man. And that's a perfect message to end on, man. So Corey Williamson, everyone, and we'll talk again soon, buddy.
Sounds good, man. I appreciate it.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank Corey for joining. We'd, of course, like to thank all of you for listening. And if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We'd be super appreciative if you'd be able to do those two things for us. And before we shut this thing down, we need to give a big shout out to our partners that continue to help us make this podcast possible. Exodus Outdoor Gear, Skull Brew Coffee Company, Obsession Bows, Ramcat Broadheads, Trophy Taker Rests, and Dead Downwind. And until next time, we'll see y'all.
November's on my heels, makes me proud, makes me steal. I could show you through the door, I ain't welcome anymore. A long time coming, if it all, it takes a special knowing to call for.